Peter Levine is great, but a little old school. There is no cure. Yeah. What do you mean he's a little old school? I'm curious your thoughts on Peter Levine, Sandra. What do you mean he's old school? I find his work really fascinating. The way that it comes across at first is it does seem like, my initial impression at least, and I've heard from others, that it does seem very simplistic. And it's not. There's a lot of depth to it, and he does a great job of explaining it. But it looks like, oh, you just did this discharge thing and the person's all good? That's it? That was my first impression of it. And maybe it's just because of the media of, watching his interviews on YouTube or seeing his sessions, because he has a couple that he puts out there, and it's kind of misleading. I don't think it's purposeful. I don't think he's trying to mislead, but it's not the full picture. And his story of Nancy in particular, where it was his first client that went through this, I believe, discharge, and he told her to picture a tiger, and she ran, and she started shaking and trembling for like 45 minutes, and then she was good. It looks like, based on when he talks about it, like, oh, she was good, that was it. But that's not the case. And in one of his books, he goes a little bit further into that, and he explains that no, she wasn't good, and he actually regrets. I don't know if maybe regret might not be the right word, but it wasn't just a one-time thing, and that he actually does work more slowly with clients, and it's not all at once like that was. So I don't think he regretted it, but that was too simplistic, in contrast to the greater paradigm of somatic experiencing, his modality. So it was interesting to, as I read more from him directly, and I'm trying to get through all of his books, whether audio or with my eyes, reading, that there is more to this stuff. And even his example of Ray, the military guy that had some like tics in his whole body, but his jaw, he worked with it in some videos. That it wasn't just that one time. Like there was more to it. There was more in preparation of that moment, and there was more after that moment. And I don't know if that always comes across, and that might just be an issue of watching stuff on YouTube. There has been so much more learned about trauma and the nervous system. The research has expanded, but I definitely honor him for the awareness he has given us about the effects of trauma. We now know how the brain is affected. Yeah, he does a pretty in-depth brain stuff too. I forget which book it was, but he does a good job overall. Like, he incorporates the stuff. He incorporates polyvagal theory. Him and Dr. Porges are like friends, so he's very well aware of that work, and he does drop that knowledge like in his books. He talks a lot about nervous system stuff. He talks about behavior and emotions and somatic sensations and images and beliefs. Like, it's very comprehensive, I find. And he's even in I can't remember the book, but he talks about consciousness, and I believe he talks about free will. I mean, it's really kind of broad.